In the third year of my secret marriage with Ryan, I fell off the award stage and my old injury recurred, leaving me in urgent need of surgery. As my only family member, he never showed up from start to finish because he was celebrating his first love's birthday. Later, paparazzi revealed that my waist injury was a lingering problem from saving Ryan many years ago. Netizens all laughed at me, saying I had bad intentions and got what I deserved. Looking at Ryan, who finally showed up late, I calmly pushed the divorce agreement in front of him. He frowned and asked, "Ella, don't you love me the most?" I lowered my eyes unfairly and said softly, "That's all in the past. Where is the patient's family member? Why hasn't he arrived yet when the surgery is about to start?" Before the nurse came in with the surgical consent form, my agent, Renee, had just informed me with a worried expression, "We still haven't been able to get in touch with Ryan." As the only person who could sign the surgical consent form on behalf of my family, Ryan had been absent ever since I fell off the award stage. Enduring the intense pain, I gritted my teeth and reached out my hand, saying, "I'll sign it myself." Before the anesthesia took effect, looking at the blinding surgical light above my head, I suddenly burst into tears. A nurse thought I was scared and held my hand to comfort me, saying it was okay. I wasn't afraid. I was just desperate. Desperate that my only family member, my husband of 3 years in a secret marriage, Ryan, the newly appointed president of the Ryan family group, had never been by my side whenever I needed him. Holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, my first concert. And at this moment, with my old injury recurring and an urgent need of a family member's signature for the surgery, he was absent every single time. The day after the surgery, I finally woke up from the anesthesia. My whole body was tightly fixed by the support frame, and it was even a luxury to move my arm. Renee told me that I had fallen quite severely, and with the recurrence of my old injury, I needed to rest and recuperate for a while. However, Renee hesitated, as if struggling to organize her words. "Sis, someone dug up the incident of you getting injured while saving President Ryan years ago, and everyone is scolding you, saying you deserve it." In the early morning after my surgery, someone revealed on the internet that my old injury was a lingering problem from saving Ryan many years ago. The surveillance video clearly captured the moment when the chandelier fell in the burning building. I firmly shielded Ryan with my body, and then we were both rushed to the hospital. Many people thought that I was trying to curry favor with the Ryan family to pave the way for my entry into the entertainment industry. And it was a pity that I wasted my excellent dancing talent. Some people also believed that I released the video myself to take the opportunity to hype. After all, my 10-year contract with the Ryan family was about to expire. Another topic that trended on the hot search list was, the president of the Ryan family celebrated the birthday of the popular rising star Nina on the film set. When clicking in, there were photos showing a group of people singing the birthday song around Nina, and Ryan was prominently standing on her left side, looking at her with tender and affectionate eyes. So, this was why Ryan hadn't shown up since I had the accident. Netizens discussed these two things together, laughing at me for my bad intentions and getting what I deserved on one hand, and blessing the long-lasting love between Ryan and Nina, who were childhood sweethearts. On the other hand, I lay in bed and watched the trending topics for 2 days in silence. Until the evening of the second day, I suddenly heard the sound of the door opening. It was only when the person approached that I realized it was Ryan. Looking at my embarrassed appearance, all tied up, he frowned and said, "How did you get injured like this?" I put away my phone and had no intention of answering him. Ryan reached out his hand, wanting to touch me, but after freezing for a moment, he retracted his hand that was hanging in the air. It seemed to be trembling a bit. "I've contacted an orthopedic expert. He and his team will be back in the country in a few days. And I'll take you to see him and see if we can also treat our old injuries and see if they can be healed." Ryan rarely talked so much to me. He chattered on, covering every detail, and seemed to act as if nothing had happened. But I, who had always responded to everything he said, remained silent throughout, finally making him show his impatience. "Ella?" Well, this was the real Ryan. He always called me by my full name. Ryan without any emotional color. His hand grabbed mine, And surprisingly, the temperature was even a bit lower than mine. It was as if he didn't hold on, I would fly away the next second. He said, "I'm sorry. My phone had no signal last night." "It doesn't matter." I slowly broke free from his grasp and said softly, "It's all in the past." Renee handed him the prepared divorce agreement. Ryan's eyes froze when he saw the big characters on the cover. With an expression of disbelief, he flipped through it and found that I had already signed the agreement. "We don't have any joint property. Don't worry. I don't want anything that belongs to you. But I hope you can transfer the house we're living in now to me. Correspondingly, I'll pay you the money according to the current housing price." I spoke slowly and clearly, but Ryan's hand holding the agreement tight and even more. After a while, Ryan finally let go and placed the agreement on the table beside him, seemingly very restrained. "Why do you suddenly want a divorce?" Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Ryan, didn't you suddenly decide to marry me in the first place?" "He didn't like me. So why did he choose me?" "Because I was an orphan and there were not so many unnecessary troubles. Because I was gentle and taciturn. But I couldn't even hide my little crush on him and would risk my life for him. Because he weighed the pros and cons and found that I was the most suitable person. Although I rushed towards him without hesitation and once fantasized that love at first sight could bear fruit. But what did I get in return?" Ryan was silent for a long time. And finally his voice softened, but there was still impatience in his tone. "Ella, first of all, you need to know that people in the Ryan family don't get divorced easily. If you're angry because I couldn't rush back to your side in time when you got injured, then I apologize to you. Ella, that night was the opening of a new investment project by the company. All the investors were there. And there was no signal in the mountains. It's not that I was accompanying Nina. No." I interrupted him and continued, "Ryan, I agreed to marry you indeed because I used to like you very much. But that's all in the past. I don't want to entrust my life to someone like you now." Ryan took a few steps back in disbelief and knocked over a flower basket beside him. His face looked very ugly, but his tone was still uncompromising. "Ella, I'll take you to see a doctor in a few days." After saying this, he left. Lying in bed alone, I suddenly felt extremely tired. Closing my eyes, I began to recall our past. Ryan and I met in university. He was a year older than me and was the president of the student union. With his outstanding appearance, remarkable abilities, and humble and polite personality, Ryan was very popular. I was just the most ordinary one among the many girls who fell in love with him at first sight. I managed to have a conversation with him at a club social gathering. He accidentally saw the album that fell out of my bag and asked in surprise, "You like this band too?" Because of our shared niche interests, many things seemed to happen naturally. Ryan would invite me to dinner and share with me the albums and autographed posters he had painstakingly collected. We seemed to have endless topics to talk about, yet it also seemed as if there was a great distance between us. We never talked about our personal feelings. During my senior year, with the recommendation of my supervisor, I joined a municipal dance troupe. In order to make the first performance as perfect as possible, I almost practiced dancing until late at night every day. That's why I encountered that fire. One night, when I finished practicing and was about to go downstairs and head back, I suddenly smelled a pungent burning smell in the corridor. Following the smell, I found that there was a fierce fire raging in the piano room downstairs. And inside, there was actually a person lying unconscious. I took a closer look and found that it was Ryan. After calling the police, I rushed in without hesitation. But no matter how much I pushed or shouted at him, he didn't respond at all. The physical difference between men and women was already significant, and I was so anxious that I almost cried, but I still couldn't drag Ryan. So, when the chandelier above our heads was about to fall, I could only choose to shield Ryan with my body. When I woke up again, the doctor said, "Ella, I'm sorry. You may no longer be suitable for dancing in the future." I had worked hard for more than 10 years. And before I could step onto a higher and better stage, everything came to an abrupt end. It was at that time that I learned that Ryan was the heir of the Ryan family group. In order to compensate me, The Ryan family signed me directly to their entertainment company. They provided me with resources and a team, enabling me to successfully debut as a singer in the shortest possible time. But the condition was, I was not allowed to mention the fact that I saved Ryan to anyone. Perhaps Ryan felt too guilty towards me, and his concern for me was all-encompassing. But I didn't want this. I've always been reluctant to be pitied by others. But I couldn't refuse Ryan. Until Christmas 3 years ago. The band we both liked finally held their first small concert in North City. Ryan got the 2 best tickets and extended an invitation to me. Somehow, I cancelled all my schedules for the next 2 days. During the grand chorus, amidst the hubbub of the crowd, Ryan leaned over to my ear and asked, "Ella, do you dare to marry me directly?" Just then, the band on stage was singing the line, "I rush towards you regardless of everything because I love you." I didn't understand Ryan's intention, but I dared. I was willing. I liked Ryan. Some people say that love at first sight is a gift from heaven. But this was my one-sided love at first sight. And it was also a gamble that I wholeheartedly embarked on. Ryan and I got the marriage certificate. The whole process was so hasty that before I could come to my senses, the staff had already handed us the marriage certificate with the seal. I soon understood Ryan's intention after getting the certificate. He directly took me to a nursing home. He proudly handed the marriage certificate in his hand to the old lady in bed, and then leaned over to her ear and said, "Grandma, I'm married. This is your granddaughter-in-law, Ella." I understood and stepped forward, smiling and greeting her. "Hello, Grandma." A glimmer of light appeared in the old lady's cloudy eyes, and she stretched out her withered hand. I quickly held it. She mumbled something, but no one could understand it clearly. The old lady of the Ryan family passed away peacefully 3 days after Ryan and I got married. The funeral was extremely simple, but all the members of the Ryan family were present. When Ryan's mother learned that Ryan had married me, she directly frowned and said, "Why is it her?" A week later, Ryan's first love, Nina, came back from abroad. When she learned that Ryan was already married, she showed a smile uglier than crying and said congratulations to us in a trembling voice. Later, I learned that Nina was the daughter-in-law that Ryan's mother had chosen for Ryan since he was a child. It was just one step away. No one expected that I, a Ching Yao Jin, a sudden disruptor, would show up out of the blue. Ryan's mother, in order to console Nina, recognized her as her godmother. Every time there was a family dinner in the Ryan family, Nina would, in front of me, repeatedly put on a show of deep mother-daughter affection with Ryan's mother, never tiring of it. Nina calls Ryan's mother godmother, calls Ryan brother, but calls me Sister Ella. No one corrects her, because she is the blatant favorite of the Ryan family, while I'm just an unexpected arrival out of the blue. It was also that year that Nina, who was doted on by countless people, suddenly said that she wanted to enter the entertainment industry. Ryan's mother was worried that Nina would suffer, so she asked Ryan to take care of her connections personally and paved the way for her with the best resources. In Nina's first movie, she partnered with the well-known director Lu Chuan and even played the leading female role. She reached the peak as soon as she debuted and had a smooth sailing all the way. Netizens dug up the relationship between her and Ryan and went crazy over their childhood sweetheart relationship, eagerly waiting for the two to get married. The two of them have never given a positive response to the various speculations of netizens. And during this process, I didn't even have the courage to ask Ryan about it. After all, this marriage without any emotional foundation from the very beginning was not born out of love. Just like this, I watched myself sink step by step while being fully aware. But I think this marriage has dragged on for too long, binding Ryan and also trapping myself. There's no need to be like this anymore. Renee knew that I couldn't stay in the hospital, so after my condition stabilized, she took me through the discharge procedures. I asked Renee to send a divorce agreement to Ryan every day, but it always seemed to disappear without a trace. I tried to ask his secretary several times in a roundabout way, and the only result I got was that President Ryan is busy. When I had almost recovered, it was already late autumn in Biishi, and winter was just around the corner. I can't stand the cold air in Biishi. Every winter, when the cold wind blows, the place on my waist that was once injured will ache faintly. Renee has tried many ways for me. We've seen countless traditional Chinese and Western doctors, but to no avail. When the pain becomes so severe that I can't bear it, I can only stay in bed. So at the moment, I can't just be anxious about getting a divorce from Ryan. I also need to rush to finish this year's work as soon as possible. Before I got injured in the fall, Renee got me the shooting of a public welfare microfilm. I had been living a secluded life for too long. I didn't expect that the sun was still so scorching hot in October. As soon as I got out of the car, I squinted my eyes uncomfortably. The shooting location was set by the seaside. But I didn't expect to run into Nina at this crucial moment. In her hand was the script of the same microfilm. The crew added someone temporarily, but no one informed me in advance. A group of people surrounded her noisily, touching up her makeup, giving her water, and arranging her appearance. The moment our eyes met, I seemed to see the mockery in her eyes. My eyelids were twitching violently, but I forgot to look away. Although the whole movie is only about 10 minutes long, a group of us still worked from dawn to dusk. I was so tired that I couldn't lift my spirits. I sat in my seat waiting for Renee to buy me coffee and come back. The rented dressing room was just a temporarily built shed. Although there were compartments, the sound insulation effect was extremely poor. Several people next door were talking about the rumors between Nina and Ryan. Some people kept asking Nina if it was really true that something good was about to happen. Nina smiled and avoided answering directly, neither explaining nor refuting, which made it even more mysterious. And everyone started to heckle and asked Nina to treat them to a meal as soon as there was good news. Their discussions reached my ears word for word. It even seemed that they were deliberately saying it for me to hear. Perhaps, after all this time, Nina still regards me as her imaginary enemy. But I felt no ripple in my heart, and I even found it a bit ridiculous. I didn't wait for Renee to come back. Instead, I waited for an unexpected guest. Ryan. As soon as he walked to the front of the tent, he heard someone teasing, "President Ryan, are you here to pick Nina up from work? Oh, young lovers in love are really different. Yeah. When can we get your wedding candies? Give us a definite answer. Hey, having fulfilled my obsession. You're already wearing the wedding ring. Could it be that?" There were so many people crowded outside noisily. Nina also shyly came out at the urging of everyone and stood in front of Ryan. Ryan frowned and finally spoke amidst the noise. "Where's Ella?" Nina's face turned pale, and the smiles on some people's faces began to fade. I don't know who pointed towards the room where I was. I don't know where Ryan came from in a hurry. He looked extremely tired, and his shirt was a bit wrinkled. He rarely didn't pay attention to his appearance like this. "I'll take you home." Ryan stood in front of me, being concise and straightforward. He was facing only me, so this sentence couldn't be for anyone else. Everyone was stunned. Nina's face turned even paler, as if she was about to cry the next second. "I'll go back by myself. I don't know what's wrong with Ryan. Suddenly making such a big fuss. It seemed like he was proclaiming some kind of sovereignty. It made me irritated. Your car tire is flat. It was your manager who asked me to come." As if to prove that Ryan wasn't lying. The next sec and a voice message from Renee popped up on my phone. "Sis. The car is broken. I've called a tow truck." I looked at the ring on his ring finger and couldn't help laughing. That was in the first year of our marriage. Ryan suddenly brought home a pair of couple rings, saying that we should wear them when attending the family dinner. We rarely wear them in our daily lives. I still got into Ryan's car. Silence has always been our way of getting along, for most of the time. So I didn't feel anything strange about it. It's just that. "When are you finally willing to sign?" At the traffic light, Ryan braked and turned to look at me. "Ella. I thought you could figure it out during this period. The one who should think it through properly is you." I looked at my bare fingers and continued. "Ryan. Do you think you've been very good to me? And it's ungrateful of me to want a divorce?" He pressed his lips tightly together, looked at me stubbornly with red eyes, as if in this way I would compromise. Helplessly, hadn't fulfilled my "I'm sorry." I could only say, "If you feel unwilling, then accompany me back to Zhuancheng." When we actually set off, the first cold air in Biishi had already arrived. Although I was dressed warmly, Ryan still wasn't at ease and asked me, Does your waist still hurt? I didn't answer. I just opened a rear car door and sat in. 2 years ago in winter, the first cold snap came unexpectedly. That day, I was in so much pain that I couldn't straighten up. I was sitting slumped by the side of the sofa with a pale face, hoping that I could recover a bit on my own. Then Ryan suddenly came back. That was the first and only time I saw an anxious expression on Ryan's face. He carefully took me to the hospital. When the nurse was applying medicine to me, Ryan saw the butterfly tattoo on my back. I got it to cover up the scar left by being hit by a chandelier. It was only the size of a fist. The blue butterfly had smooth and simple lines, as if it could come to life the next second. There seemed to be some shock and lingering fear in his eyes. Does it hurt? His eyes were a bit red, and his voice was also trembling. I didn't know which it Ryan was asking about for a moment. But I shook my head. It was also that time that made me have an illusion. I thought that Ryan really had some genuine feelings for me. Now that I think about it, it's just empty talk. Delayed feelings are as worthless as weeds. My enthusiasm had long since disappeared completely after being left out time and time again. Although the temperature in Chongqing is not bad, it rains a lot all year round. The streets and alleys are always wet. Coupled with underdeveloped transportation and average development of the tourism industry, the whole city has a kind of secluded and cold atmosphere. The Welfare Institute is already old. Although it has been renovated constantly, you can still tell that it has a long history. When Mama Lee saw me, she was taken aback. It took her a while to ask me tentatively, "Are you Ella?" She is no longer young. Her temples have turned gray, and her face is covered with the marks left by time. But her eyes are still gentle. I smiled and nodded. "Mama Lee, I'm Ella." Ryan helped me move out the boxes of stationery prepared for the children in the trunk one by one. Mama Lee quietly asked, "Who is this?" I couldn't help but smile. "A friend. This gentle and loving woman has dedicated most of her life to the children in the Welfare Institute. She has never been married and has no children of her own. But she is always worried that the children in the Welfare Institute will suffer when they enter society. She asked me a lot of questions. But in fact, she was just trying to find out if I was doing well. Fortunately, heading fulfilledly. She doesn't use the internet and doesn't have a smartphone. So she doesn't know about the many difficult situations I've been in outside. Has our Ella become a dancer? No. But everything is going well. I live in a big house, have a beautiful car, and can earn a lot of money that I can't spend all. Mama Lee seemed to heave a sigh of relief and murmured, "That's good, that's good." Over the years, although I have donated a lot of supplies to the Welfare Institute on and off, I have never dared to come back. This year, somehow, I wanted to come back and take a look. Ryan and I accompanied Mama Lee to be busy all day long, and we finally had a chance to take a breather at night. I also started to tell him about my past for the first time. Over the years, I've kept dreaming of two people, and one of them is Mama Lee. When I was 6 years old, my father died in a car accident. Soon after, my mother remarried and left alone. The grandmother who lived with me also passed away because she was too old. But because I didn't meet the requirements, no Welfare Institute was willing to take me in. I picked up garbage from the street trash cans for more than half a month. Finally, heading fulfilledly, when a heavy rain came and I was hiding under the bus stop thinking that I would die that night, the woman in front of me carried me back to the Welfare Institute. She bathed me, washed my hair, and changed me into clean clothes. She said to me gently, "Good baby. Don't be afraid. Mama Lee is here for you from now on." Because I didn't like to talk and even resisted communicating with others, and coupled with my unknown background and no family willing to adopt me, I stayed in the Welfare Institute until I was 10 years old, long past the best age for adoption. But Mama Lee didn't care. She said that one more child just meant one more pair of chopsticks. Moreover, our Ella is so obedient. Ryan, hadin so Ryan. Do you know that behind this glamorous world, there are too many things that are not so glorious? You grew up with no worries about food and clothing, living a carefree and unrestrained life. You have never not gotten what you wanted. And you only keep getting better and better things. So, you can't understand how much effort I've spent just to get to the point of meeting you. Not to mention loving you wholeheartedly and without hesitation later. In the life where I don't allow any mistakes. I have already made too many mistakes because of you. It's also time for me to think about the future path for myself. Ryan was uncharacteristically silent. I handed him my ring. Ryan. Can you let me make a choice for myself this time? Under the moonlight, his eyes seemed a bit red. And even the corners of his eyes were a bit moist. I don't know how long we looked at each other. Finally, heading till Feldley, Ryan tremblingly took the ring. He lowered his head and didn't want to look at me anymore. His voice was a bit choked up. Ella. I'm sorry. There was no confrontation. No red-faced argument. In such a peaceful night. We finally reached a reconciliation. Ryan still had a large company to manage. And countless calls came in every day urging him to go back. Finally, heading till Feldley. On the third day, I gave him the order to leave. Do you still want to stay here and not leave? I promised Ryan that I would stay in Chuancheng until spring and go back to handle the formalities when the weather got warmer. So, after Ryan left, I continued to stay in Chuancheng. I spent most of my time helping out at the Welfare Institute. Gradually, I could actually sleep well due to the exhaustion after labor. Until the next spring. My new song, The Actor, was released, and someone once again tipped off the paparazzi about my past. I used to be the last disciple of the famous dancer Luna. Is Ella crazy? She's even trying to ride on Luna's popularity. Does she want Luna to die with regret? Is Ella worthy of Luna by trying to climb up the social ladder? How dare she even mention her? Could it be that Ella drove Luna to death with anger back then? As if it wasn't enough that my luck was already bad. In the morning, Ryan, who had been comforting me that everything was okay and that he would handle it all, was in the news for getting into a car accident, which topped the financial news headlines. I bought the earliest flight ticket back to North City. Several times. I almost fell because of the slippery road, but the panic in my heart didn't allow me to think too much. Since my debut, I've known that some people have been playing tricks behind my back, but those were just petty acts that didn't really matter. So I just turned a blind eye and let them go. But this time, Luna. Over the years, I have repeatedly dreamed of two people. One is Mama Lee, who took care of me day and night without rest. The other is Luna, who taught me all she had learned in her life without reservation. But her efforts were in vain. When I was 10 years old, a film crew came to the institute to film on location. Luna took a fancy to me immediately when she saw me secretly learning dance moves in the corner. Dear, would you like to come with me and learn to dance? I started learning dance very late and endured a lot of hardships. But I cherished this opportunity very much. Because getting one-on-one teaching from the famous dancer Luna was an opportunity that many people couldn't find even if they searched high and low. Luna was completely cultivating me as her successor. This is also why, when I risked my life to save Ryan and the past was brought up, it triggered such great anger among netizens. They were angry at my failure to live up to expectations, sad about my misfortune, and resentful that I didn't do more. I still remember that when Luna, who was recuperating in a foreign country, learned the news that I was injured and couldn't dance anymore, she was silent for a long time. Finally, heading till Feldley. Her voice was almost choked with sobs. Dear, you know that I don't have the energy to train another child anymore. In the second year after my debut, Luna passed away due to illness at the age of only 41. Her fans spontaneously organized to see her off. And the scene was very grand. I wrote her into my song as a way to fulfill the promise I once made to her. It's just that this promise was fulfilled too late. The deceased is gone, and the living can't do much more for her. Yet they pulled her into this mess. It shouldn't be like this. Ryan's surgery hadn't ended yet. Ryan's mother and Nina were waiting outside. Nina was still sobbing in a low voice, looking pitiful. When Ryan's mother saw me, she raised her hand as if to hit me. I tried my best to stop her and instead slapped Nina, who was standing beside her, with a backhand. The clear and loud sound was particularly abrupt in the empty corridor. A red mark immediately appeared on Nina's face, along with a bloodstain from the scratch of my nails. Nina also changed from her usual docile appearance like a little white rabbit and growled, Ella, are you crazy? Nina, Have I been too lenient with you all these years that you have the courage to meddle so much? I grabbed Mina's hair and forced her to raise her head. Ryan's mother was stunned for a moment and then sided with Mina, scolding me, Ella. Let go of her right now. I sneered and leaned close to Nina's ear, saying, I know all the little tricks you've been playing behind my back these years. But you should have investigated thoroughly before targeting me. Luna is my bottom line. What are you talking nonsense about? Do you think, if the Ryan family knew about those messy things you did abroad, Aunt I would still be so eager to have you as her daughter-in-law? A flash of panic crossed Nina's eyes. But she quickly regained her composure. What are you talking about? Do you need me to remind you? I said word by word. The bar. The striptease. The rich people's show? Nina's face turned pale instantly. And her fingertips couldn't stop trembling. She looked at me in disbelief and said viciously, Ella. You investigated me. Suddenly, I let go of her. And she fell to the floor without any defense. I turned around and looked at the decent and noble woman in front of me with a sense of mockery. I said calmly, Aunt I. Don't put all the blame on me. I didn't want to see this happen to Ryan either. That year, even though Ryan married me, a woman who didn't match his family background without any explanation, the members of the Ryan family had already tacitly accepted me as Ryan's wife. But Ryan's mother didn't. That year, she used the most gentle tone to plant the idea in my mind, telling me, you and Ryan haven't had a wedding yet. So you don't have to call me Mom. Over the years, although my relationship with Ryan's mother wasn't full of hostility, in the few inevitable interactions we had, it was obvious that even though I was humble and submissive, she was still not satisfied with me. Fortunately, having fulfilled my desire, I no longer need to try my best to please her. I don't care anymore. I don't know who, regardless of the consequences, secretly took a video of me slapping Nina and posted it online. Although the Ryan family has been trying their best to remove the trending topic, the amount of information this time is too large. And every word can be pondered carefully when taken out of context. This time, I finally decided to tell my own story in public for the first time. I started from being homeless and being taken in by Mama Lee, and then talked about meeting Luna when I was 10 years old, all the way to the young man I fell in love with at first sight during my university days. He was as clear as the breeze and as bright as the moon, full of vitality. Just seeing him made me feel that the world was a beautiful place. He was also the motivation for me to work even harder for a long time. At that time, I didn't know which family's heir he was being groomed to be. So, when danger came, I protected him just because I wanted to protect the person I liked. Out of guilt. He cared about me in every possible way. But I still shamefully indulged in that period of time. To reassure his grandmother. We had a ridiculous and hasty marriage. I once fantasized that one-sided love could also bear fruit, but later I found that it wouldn't. He never loved me. We each got what we needed. And we slept in the same bed but had different dreams. Fortunately, having fulfilled YMCA, it's about to end soon. I liked him. But he never liked me. A gamble that I wholeheartedly embarked on naturally ended with my admitting defeat. Although I didn't explicitly say who I was talking about, everyone guessed it. This spring, I finally had the courage to make all these things public. Giving myself a chance to breathe. I no longer cared about the discussions on the internet. At the end of the article, I said, I think since I went to see Mama Lee, I should also go to see Luna. I want to tell her in person that I haven't forgotten the promise I made to her, and I have fulfilled it. When Ryan came, I was in the yard, helping the maid trim the flowers and plants. He was seriously injured in the car accident, and I waited until the end of summer before he was finally able to be discharged from the hospital successfully. We hadn't seen each other for a long time. Maybe because he had been ill. He seemed a bit thinner. Do you want to have a meal first? I had made an appointment with Ryan to get a divorce today. It was still early, and having breakfast didn't conflict with that. Ella. Mom's song cooked millet porridge today. Have some. Ryan nodded, and his eyes were a bit red. I sat at the dining table and quietly peeled the eggshell for Ryan. Such a plain and warm scene was something I had been looking forward to for many years but had never experienced. Ryan had the huge Ryan family to take care of. and I had endless announcements to attend. We hardly had a few opportunities to sit together and have a meal throughout the year, let alone peel eggs for each other. Ella. After we finish. After we finish the formalities. Would you like to accompany me to visit our university? Ryan's eyes seemed to be even redder, and his tone carried a hint of pleading. I lowered my eyes and nodded, okay. The school was deserted since it hadn't started the new semester yet. The room that had been burned by the fire before had been renovated, and there was no sign of it having been burned at all. Ryan suddenly stopped, pointed to the dance studio on the opposite building diagonally, smiled, and said, actually, the first time I saw you, I was standing right here. You seemed to be tired from dancing and came out for some air. You just stood there quietly, and it was as if you were covered with a layer of light. Maybe I stared at you for too long. My friend followed my gaze and started introducing you to me. I rehearsed countless times for our first encounter. On the day of the fire, I actually wanted to go to you and confess my feelings. I didn't expect that the piano room would catch fire. I was so overconfident that I ended up dragging you into it. Ella, I often couldn't sleep these years. Sometimes it was because of guilt, and more often it was because I was afraid of losing you. I married you not just to reassure my grandmother. I just really wanted to keep you by my side. But I didn't know how to face you. And I was afraid of losing you by accident. Ella. I withdrew my gaze, turned to look at Ryan. And it was hard to imagine that I was so calm at this moment. I interrupted him and said, Ryan. It's all in the past. Is it a miss? No. Over the years, we had many opportunities to sort out this relationship. But Ryan, we wasted all of them. I didn't want to dwell on the past anymore. Nor did I want to delve into how sincere Ryan was towards me and what kind of feelings he had for Nina. My obsession with him had long since disappeared gradually when he tacitly allowed Nina to provoke me again and again. I was already exhausted and didn't want to think about it anymore. Ryan started crying. A man who was almost 30 years old. He tried his best to hold back in front of me, but he still covered his eyes and cried like a child. I gently hugged Ryan, patted his back, and said in a low voice, goodbye, Ryan. We went our separate ways at the school gate. I couldn't help but look back. The sun was shining just right, and I seemed to see the 20-year-old young man under the shade of the trees. He and I were listening to the band's new song. It seemed that he whispered something during that time. I took off my headphones and asked him, what did you say? He shook his head. I like you. It's a pity that Ryan and I clearly liked each other at the same time. But our relationship still ended without any result. From Ryan's perspective, Ryan. Who are you looking at? One of my buddies put his arm around my shoulder and followed my line of sight to see Ella resting alone against the railing. Hey, having fulfilled my obsession. Ella from the School of Arts. She's a well-known ice queen. I heard that few people can talk to her. Don't tell me you've really taken a fancy to her? I smiled and didn't deny it. I tried many ways to find out about Ella's hobbies, but didn't get much information. There were only pictures of her dancing in competitions on the campus forum. Everyone was talking about her beauty and also discussing her aloofness. I heard that once. Ella coldly threw the roses sent by a rich second-generation young master into the trash can. Since then, no one dared to confess their love to her easily. Actually, I didn't like that band. Before the club organized a social gathering, I bribed the president of the dance club. He confirmed with me several times that Ella would come. And only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. Before the social gathering started, I crammed all the information about that band and rehearsed countless times on how to greet her, for fear that a single mistake would end things before they even began. Ella wasn't as cold as others said. She was lively and interesting, and would talk a lot when it came to the band and dancing. But I didn't expect that because of me, she would end up ruining her beloved dance career. I was scared every day that Ella would leave silently. So I couldn't wait to have the company sign her. But it still wasn't enough. That band originally had no chance of holding a concert. It took me half a year from contacting them, choosing the venue, planning, to promoting. When the place was filled with people, I proposed to Ella. I was so nervous that my voice trembled at the end. At that moment, My selfishness was fully exposed. I wanted to use marriage to keep Ella by my side forever. Ella was stunned for a moment. Anne came to her senses and said, "Okay." The wedding ring I gave her was carefully selected by me for a long time. But I didn't tell her. Maybe Ella didn't know that I wore the wedding ring every day. Many times. When I came home late at night and saw her sleeping in the bedroom, my anxious heart would finally calm down. However, when I got married to Ella, I had just taken over the Ryan family. The senior management questioned my ability and naturally gave me a hard time. My sleeping time was compressed to less than 5 hours a day. But every time I thought that as long as I worked harder, Ella could have an easier life, I would be filled with motivation. How could it be her? When my mother learned that I had married Ella, she frowned, and her tone was full of undisguised dissatisfaction. But I said, "Mom, I like Ella. She's the girl I told you about that I liked so much in college." How am I supposed to tell Nina's father? Nina's father. Nina's family and ours are family friends. We have a good relationship and have always had close interactions. A few years ago, Nina's father broke his leg while saving my mother and has been in a wheelchair ever since. Our family promised Nina's family, if Nina's family ever encounters any difficulties in the future, we will definitely offer all-out assistance. My mother always half-jokingly said to Nina in private, "Will you marry Ryan in the future? Okay?" Whenever I heard that, I would stop her and say, "Mom, Nina will meet the person she likes." Later, Nina's father passed away. On his deathbed, my mother repeatedly promised him that she would treat Nina well. I only see Nina as a sister. I knelt in front of my grandma's memorial tablet and said softly, "Mom, Grandma has already accepted this granddaughter-in-law. You should bless us." I couldn't wait to marry Ella. Besides wanting to keep Ella, I also wanted to get Grandma's approval. As long as Grandma approved, the family's dissatisfaction didn't matter much. I actually bought tickets for Ella's first concert. But because I missed the plane, I missed it. When I arrived, the concert was over. Large numbers of fans were walking out one after another. From their brief descriptions, I could tell that the concert was a great success. I was very happy. I collected the tickets for every one of Ella's concerts. I even created a special folder to save every video of the shows she participated in. But I never went to the scene. I was afraid of overstepping. Even when I finally summoned the courage to hold her hand while crossing the road, it startled her. Nina always found ways to pester me. Whether it was about moving, changing cars, or having meals. Every time I just had a moment of free time, her messages would come. I refused most of her requests. But the next time she would come to my office with a wrong look and ask if I was annoyed with her. "Nina, you're old enough to have a boyfriend. But I only like you." I straightened and the wedding ring on my hand and shook my head. "That's not love." Nina cried and asked me what love was. I almost immediately thought of Ella. I smiled contentedly and replied, "It's when you can't wait to have a family with her." Although I tried my best to reduce my interactions with Nina, paparazzi always liked to make up stories. The first time I had a scandal with Nina, I even looked forward to Ella's reaction. I was like a young man in love, looking forward to my partner being jealous and throwing a tantrum. But nothing happened. Since she got injured, Ella seemed to have returned to her withdrawn, cold, and indifferent state. I never knew what Ella wanted. I gave her a microphone. She said thank you. I told her that the band had disbanded. She said it was okay. That her youth was over too. I wanted to pick her up from work. She said it wasn't a good idea and there was no need to go through the trouble. She seemed to think about me in every way, but at the same time, she kept me at a distance. I would rather she agreed to marry me because she wanted to get something from me. But Ella always had no demands on me. She was like a precious item that I shouldn't touch. Our relationship was like a dream that would shatter at the slightest touch. When Ella made an appointment to see me again, I thought she was giving me a chance. But she didn't. I cancelled all my work and rushed home directly. She was chatting with Aunt Song, with a faint smile on her face. This peaceful and beautiful picture was what I had hoped for countless times. But I knew this was the only time. We loved each other but didn't really understand each other. I was too slow-witted and could only let her go back into the crowd. The end.